What if one small island, just 15 miles off the coast of Iran, held the power to end a war, collapse a regime, and reshape the global economy overnight? Well, right now, the Trump administration is seriously considering taking it. And the world is watching with its breath held. Welcome to Military Press U.S., your source for the latest updates on American military strategy, U.S. and U.K. politics, global leadership, and the decisions shaping the Western world. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story this big. And trust us, they don't come much bigger than this. Today, we're breaking down one of the most dramatic geopolitical developments of 2026. The Trump administration is actively weighing the seizure of Kharg Island, Iran's economic crown jewel, as a way to force Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply normally passes. This isn't a rumor. This isn't political theater. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge of the issue, the Trump administration is considering plans to either occupy or blockade Iran's Kharg Island to pressure the regime into reopening the strait. The implications reach from Washington to London, from the Persian Gulf to the fuel pumps on your street corner. Let's break it all down. The 2026 Iran crisis began on February 28th when the United States and Israel launched coordinated military strikes on Iran, targeting military facilities, nuclear sites, and senior Iranian leadership in a sweeping opening offensive that shocked the world. The response from Tehran was swift and devastating. Iran launched retaliatory missile and drone strikes targeting U.S. embassies, military installations, and oil infrastructure throughout the Middle East, hoping its broad retaliation would exact costs and pressure its adversaries into mediation. And then came the move that changed everything for the global economy. In early March, Iran confirmed the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, threatening any ship that attempted to pass through it. The narrow international waterway, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas normally travels, was now under effective Iranian control. Iran permitted only vessels carrying its oil to China, Turkey, Pakistan, and India to pass. Shipping from other regional producers, bound for Europe and Asia, was shut down entirely. Kharg Island is Iran's economic lifeline. Iran is one of the world's largest oil producers, and oil and gas exports are how the country generates the majority of its revenue. This small island is responsible for around 90% of Iran's oil exports, and crucially, the waters surrounding it are deep enough for massive supertankers to dock, making it completely irreplaceable in Iran's export chain. Tanker tracking data shows that in recent years, the island has handled well over 90% of Iran's crude exports, roughly 1.5 million barrels per day. The island's loading terminals were originally designed to handle up to 7 million barrels per day and can service multiple supertankers at once, with more than 50 crude storage tanks capable of holding tens of millions of barrels. According to sources familiar with the deliberations, 3 options are on the table: a full ground occupation of the island, a naval blockade, preventing tankers from reaching the island at all, or targeted strikes on its oil infrastructure. Pentagon lawyers have reportedly been consulted to provide legal opinions on each of these potential moves. Trump is drawn to the idea of seizing Kharg Island outright because it would constitute, in the words of one U.S. official, an economic knockout of the regime, essentially defunding Tehran overnight. The president himself has been carefully, if dramatically, signaling his intentions publicly. When asked in a mid-March interview whether he would take Kharg Island, Trump deflected with characteristic flair, asking, "Who would ask a question like that? And what fool would answer it?" But days later, he told reporters directly that he is considering further action against Kharg Island's oil infrastructure, adding bluntly, "We can do that on 5 minutes' notice. It'll be over." Earlier in March, the U.S. Air Force had already conducted what Trump himself described as one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East, targeting dozens of Iranian military sites, but notably sparing Kharg Island's oil infrastructure, which Trump said he did out of what he called reasons of decency. That restraint, however, may not last much longer. Republican hawks are pushing hard for decisive action. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina put it in stark terms on national television, saying, Kharg Island, 90% of their income comes from oil and gas revenue, and 100% of that revenue-generating capability sits on a single island. Mr. President, take Kharg Island. This war is over, but not everyone is convinced the strategy is as clean as it sounds. Military analysts and energy policy experts have cautioned that a takeover or destruction of the island is unlikely to change Tehran's fundamental calculus on its own. Iran's leadership has already absorbed extraordinary losses. And yet the regime keeps fighting. Cutting off oil may not break the will of a government that has already decided it is locked in existential struggle. The United Kingdom finds itself in a deeply uncomfortable position. On one hand, it stands shoulder to shoulder with Washington on the threat from Iran. The UK, alongside France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada, issued a joint statement condemning Iran's attacks on commercial vessels and its de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz, calling on Tehran to immediately cease its threats, mine-laying, drone strikes, and missile attacks on commercial shipping. But Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stopped well short of any military commitment. Speaking from Downing Street, Starmer was unambiguous. British forces would not be joining a combat mission in the Persian Gulf. That hasn't stopped the UK from quietly contributing behind the scenes, however. A team of British military officers has been dispatched to U.S. Central Command at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, sent to assist in drawing up plans and developing options for reopening the waterway. In theory, that expertise could give American forces additional operational options against Iran. However, the Royal Navy is understood to be unwilling to deploy warships to the region, given the serious and demonstrated threat posed by Iranian drones, missiles, and fast attack boats operating in those waters. This cautious stance has drawn sharp criticism back home, with opposition voices accusing the Labour government of being, in their words, very slow off the mark. Behind the scenes, though, Britain has been doing more diplomatic heavy lifting than the headlines suggest. The UK was one of the driving forces in assembling that seven-nation joint statement, pushing hard over several days to get as many Western countries as possible to sign on. Prime Minister Starmer reportedly played a personal role in convincing French President Macron to lift his initial opposition to the declaration. Trump, however, has not been satisfied with words alone. He has publicly called out the UK and other allies for declining to deploy warships to the region, and his frustration with the Western alliance is becoming increasingly difficult to conceal. Let's start with the raw stakes. If the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, the consequences for the global economy will be severe. Europe loses access to a significant share of its liquefied natural gas. Oil prices have already surged past $100 a barrel. Food shortages linked to fertilizer supply disruptions are a growing concern in developing nations. The longer this lasts, the deeper and more irreversible the damage becomes. The Kharg Island Gambit, if executed, would be unlike anything the U.S. military has attempted in decades. The island sits 500 miles beyond the Strait of Hormuz and just 15 miles off the Iranian coast. Any amphibious assault force heading its way would have to navigate waters that Iran could rapidly mine, while facing shore-based drone boats, missile batteries, and fast attack vessels. The military risks are enormous, and they are not lost on the Pentagon's most senior planners. On the diplomatic front, the cracks in the Western alliance are widening with every passing day. Trump has threatened that nations who fail to step up will be remembered. In a remarkable statement posted to Truth Social in mid-March, Trump declared that the United States does not need the help of anyone regarding the war, a pointed and very public rebuke of allies who have offered solidarity but stopped short of military action. For the UK specifically, this moment represents the central tension of the Starmer era. How do you maintain the special relationship with an unpredictable American president while managing a British public with very limited appetite for another Middle Eastern military conflict? The answer so far has been to talk loudly and quietly send a planning team to Tampa. For Iran, a Kharg Island seizure could be potentially regime-ending in economic terms, but the danger cuts both ways. Seizing the island could trigger Iranian retaliatory strikes against oil facilities across Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia, potentially setting off a broader regional conflagration that no one can fully control. As one senior U.S. official put it plainly, there are big risks. There are big rewards. The president isn't there yet. That single sentence is the defining statement of this entire crisis. So here's the question we want to put to you today. Should the United States military seize Kharg Island to force Iran's hand? Or does this risk dragging the entire world into a broader and far more dangerous conflict? And where do you think America's allies, including Britain, should stand? Firmly alongside Washington in the Persian Gulf, or maintaining a cautious distance? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. This is exactly the kind of debate that defines the future of American military strategy and Western leadership, and we genuinely want to hear where you stand. If you found this breakdown valuable, please hit the like button right now. It helps more people find this channel at a moment when clear, accurate military and political analysis matters more than ever. Subscribe to Military Press U.S. and make sure you have turned on your notifications because this story is developing by the hour, and we will have full updates as the situation evolves. Every view, every like, and every subscriber helps us keep doing this work independently and without spin. One small island, 90% of a nation's oil, a world economy hanging in the balance, a U.S. president weighing history with every order he gives, and an American military machine that is ready but waiting for the word. Whatever happens next in the Persian Gulf will echo across Pentagon briefing rooms, London war cabinets, and kitchen tables from Kansas to Kent. Because in the end, that is the nature of American power in the modern world. Decisions made in Washington reverberate in the lives of millions everywhere else. The world is watching, and so are we. This has been Military Press U.S. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.